David sat on the cold pavement, his back against the rough brick wall of a convenience store. The cardboard sign in front of him, smudged with dirt, read, "Just trying to get back on my feet. Anything helps." He wasn't the type to ask for help. He had worked hard all his life, but life had a way of pulling the rug out from under him. First, he lost his job when the company he worked for downsized. Then, his savings drained faster than he expected. Before he knew it, the landlord changed the locks, and suddenly he had nowhere to go. Portland was a city of dreams for some, but for David, it was a daily fight for survival. He moved between shelters, soup kitchens, and street corners, always hoping that tomorrow would be different. But tomorrow came, and it was just another cold morning, another hungry night. People passed by him without a glance, some in expensive suits, others lost in their own struggles. He used to be one of them. He had dreams, a future, plans. Now, his reality was a backpack with a few belongings and a growing sense of hopelessness. One evening, as he sat outside a small cafe, watching families laugh inside over warm meals, an old friend from years ago stopped in his tracks. "David," the man said, eyes wide in disbelief. David looked up, recognizing the face but struggling to place the name. "It's me, Jake, from high school." David forced a smile, embarrassed at his condition. "Hey, Jake. Long time no see." Jake's eyes filled with concern. "Man, what happened to you?" David exhaled deeply. "Life happened." Jake sat down beside him, ignoring the stares from pedestrians. "Let me help you, brother. You can crash at my place for a few nights, get cleaned up." David hesitated. He had gotten used to people looking away, pretending he didn't exist. But here was someone willing to help. Maybe, just maybe, this was the break he needed. As the night deepened, David followed Jake toward an apartment, warm, safe, and far from the streets. What he didn't know was that this night would be the start of something much bigger than he could ever imagine. David stood in front of the bathroom mirror, gripping the edges of the sink. His own reflection startled him. Unshaven, sunken cheeks, eyes filled with exhaustion. The warm water running over his hands felt foreign after months of icy rain and public restroom sinks. Jake's apartment was small but comfortable. A couch, a TV, a kitchen that smelled of freshly brewed coffee. It wasn't much, but compared to sleeping under bridges, it was heaven. "You hungry?" Jake called from the kitchen. David nodded, still feeling awkward. He wasn't used to kindness anymore. As they sat down with plates of steaming spaghetti, Jake broke the silence. "So, what's the plan, man? You gotta have some family, some way to get back on your feet." David poked at his food. "My mom, but I haven't spoken to her in years. We had a falling out. She moved to Florida, and I don't even know if she'd want to hear from me." Jake hesitated. "Man, I don't know your story, but if she's still around, maybe it's worth trying." David sighed. "Maybe, but first I need a job. I can't keep living like this." "Then let's get you back in the game," Jake said, pulling out his laptop. "I know a few places hiring. Let's update your resume, get you looking sharp, and get your life rolling again." For the first time in a long time, David felt a small spark inside him. Hope. As they scrolled through job listings, something caught David's eye. A small notification on Jake's screen. It was an article about unclaimed inheritances. People who didn't even know they were entitled to money left behind by relatives. David chuckled. "Can you imagine? A guy like me inheriting money? That stuff only happens in movies." Jake smirked. Hey, you never know, man. Life is weird. David didn't think much of it. He had bigger things to worry about. But deep in the shadows of fate, something was happening, something he couldn't yet see. And soon his life would change in ways he never expected. The next morning, David woke up to the unfamiliar sensation of being warm. No stiff muscles from sleeping on concrete, no damp clothes from rain. Just a couch, a blanket, and the soft hum of a city waking up outside Jake's apartment. Jake was already up, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. "Morning, man. You sleep okay?" "Better than I have in months," David admitted, stretching. "You ready to start job hunting today?" Jake asked. David nodded. "Yeah, let's do it." Jake grinned. "That's what I like to hear." But just as David reached for his own cup of coffee, the past came knocking. Jake's phone buzzed with an unknown number. He frowned. "Weird. I don't usually get calls this early." Then Jake's eyes widened as he looked at the screen. Dude, this is for you." He held out the phone. "Someone's been looking for you." David hesitated. "Who even knows I'm here?" Jake shrugged. "Only one way to find out." Heart pounding, David took the phone. "Hello?" A professional-sounding voice on the other end responded. "Is this David Carter?" "Yeah, who's asking?" "My name is Richard Lawson. I'm an estate attorney from Miami, Florida. I've been trying to locate you for several months. Do you have a moment to talk?" David's grip on the phone tightened. His mom had moved to Florida. His mind raced. Why would a lawyer be looking for him? Yeah, I guess," he said cautiously. There was a pause. Then the words that would flip his entire world upside down. "I regret to inform you that your mother passed away a few months ago. As her only son, you are the sole beneficiary of her estate." David's breath caught in his throat. "Wait, what?" The lawyer continued, his tone careful but firm. "Your mother left behind an inheritance, Mr. Carter, a substantial one." David blinked, his mind reeling. This had to be some kind of mistake. He barely knew what to say. "How much?" His voice was barely above a whisper. The lawyer didn't hesitate. "Approximately $1.4 million." The words hit David like a freight train. He stood frozen, his whole world tilting on its axis. Jake, watching from the couch, raised an eyebrow. "Dude, you okay?" David didn't answer, because in that moment he wasn't sure if he was dreaming, hallucinating, or about to wake up back on the cold pavement. But this wasn't a dream, and nothing would ever be the same again. David sat in stunned silence, the lawyer's words echoing in his head. $1.4 million, his mother's estate, his mother, whom he hadn't spoken to in years, gone. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. Are you sure?" Richard Lawson, the attorney, remained patient. "Yes, Mr. Carter. We've been trying to reach you for months, but given your situation, you were difficult to locate. Your mother's assets, including a sizable bank account, are legally yours. We need you to come to Florida to finalize everything." David leaned forward, pressing his fingers against his temple. It didn't feel real. Jake waved a hand in front of his face. "Dude, you look like you just saw a ghost. What's going on?" David put the phone on speaker. "Say that again," he said to the lawyer, still not believing it. Richard sighed. "Your mother left you an inheritance of approximately $1.4 million. You are her sole beneficiary. This is not a scam, and I understand this is overwhelming, but you need to come to Florida to claim it." Jake's jaw dropped. "Holy—" He ran a hand through his hair. Man, you're rich. David wasn't so sure. His whole life, money had been a struggle. Good things didn't just happen to people like him. His heart pounded. "What's the catch?" David asked. "There's always a catch." "No catch," Richard assured him, "but there are steps you need to take. You'll need proper identification paperwork and a meeting with the bank to transfer the assets." "Do you have a valid ID?" David let out a humorless chuckle. "I don't even have a wallet." Silence on the other end. Then the lawyer spoke again, his tone understanding. "That's okay. We can work through that. But we need you here in person as soon as possible." David's mind raced. How was he supposed to get to Florida? He didn't have a dollar to his name. He didn't even own a suitcase. Jake stood up. "Man, I know that look. You're about to talk yourself out of this. But listen to me. This is real. You just went from having nothing to having more money than most people see in their lifetime." David exhaled shakily. "It's just a lot. I don't even know where to start." "You start," Jake said firmly, "by getting on a damn plane to Florida." David stared at the phone. Florida. A place he hadn't even thought about in years. A place where his mother had lived and died without him. Was this really happening? And more importantly, was he ready for it? David stood at the airport terminal, his fingers tightening around the boarding pass Jake had bought for him. Just 2 days ago, he had been sleeping on the streets. Now he was boarding a plane to Florida to claim $1 million inheritance. It still didn't feel real. "Last chance to back out," Jake joked, nudging him. "Not that I'd let you." David smirked, shaking his head. "No way. If this is real, I need to see it with my own eyes." Jake grinned. "That's the spirit. Now go get your millions, man." With a final pat on the back, Jake watched as David took a deep breath and stepped toward the jet bridge. The roar of the engines, the hum of passengers around him, it all blurred together. He had never flown before. As the plane took off, he stared out the window, watching Portland shrink beneath him, the city that had chewed him up and spit him out. This was a one-way trip. 3 hours later, Miami heat hit him like a wall. The damp air clung to his skin, so different from the chilly streets he had known. The airport buzzed with life, tourists in Hawaiian shirts, families dragging suitcases, business travelers rushing past him. And then, standing near the baggage claim, holding a small sign with his name on it, was Richard Lawson. David had expected someone cold and detached, a suit with an agenda. But the man who approached him looked warm, professional, and strangely reassuring. Mid-50s, neatly trimmed beard, sharp blue eyes. "Mr. Carter," the lawyer said, extending a hand. David hesitated, then shook it. "Yeah, that's me." Richard gave him a nod. "Welcome to Miami. You must have a lot of questions." "You have no idea," David muttered. The lawyer motioned toward the exit. "Let's get you settled first. I've arranged a hotel for you. Tomorrow morning, we meet at my office to go over the details of your inheritance." David followed him to the parking lot, still half expecting this to be some elaborate joke. But as he slid into the back of a sleek black car and watched the palm trees blur past, reality started to sink in. This was happening. Tomorrow he would find out the truth about his mother's last wishes, and whether this money would finally give him the future he never thought he'd have. The next morning, David sat in a sleek, air-conditioned office, his hands resting on a thick folder labeled Estate of Margaret Carter. Across from him, Richard Lawson adjusted his glasses, spreading out a series of documents on the polished desk. "This is it, David," the lawyer said, his voice calm but firm. "Your mother left everything to you." David exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I still don't get it. We barely talked. Why would she leave me all this?" Richard clasped his hands together. "Your mother never stopped caring about you. In her final years, she wanted to reach out, but she was afraid you wouldn't want to hear from her. She left behind this letter for you." The lawyer slid a sealed envelope across the desk. David hesitated before picking it up. His hands trembled as he unfolded the letter. "My dear David, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hate that we lost so much time. I never stopped loving you, even when life pulled us apart. I wanted to fix things, but I didn't know how. I hope this inheritance helps you build the future you deserve. Use it wisely, my son. Find happiness. You deserve it. Love, Mom." David blinked, his vision blurring. He hadn't cried in years, not when he lost his job, not when he ended up on the streets. But now the weight of everything came crashing down. Richard gave him a moment before speaking again. "Your mother's assets include liquid funds, stocks, and a property she owned. All of it is legally yours." David let out a shaky breath. "What do I do now?" Richard smiled. "That's up to you, but you're not the man you were a few months ago. You have a second chance, David. What do you want?" David sat back, staring out the office window at the Miami skyline. For so long, he had been stuck in survival mode. Now, for the first time in years, he had options. A thought crossed his mind, the dream he had let go of long ago. "I always wanted a home," he said quietly, "a place where I don't have to wonder where I'll sleep next. Somewhere peaceful, near water, maybe." Richard nodded. "That's a good place to start. And with this money, that dream is more than possible." 6 months later, David leaned against the railing of his new home in Cape Coral, Florida, staring out at the water. A small boat rocked gently against the dock. The house was modest compared to what he could afford, but it was his. He sipped his morning coffee, feeling the warmth of the sun on his skin. No more cold nights on the pavement, no more uncertainty. His phone buzzed. It was Jake. "Bro, I still can't believe it. You went from homeless to homeowner in under a year." David chuckled. "Yeah, life's crazy like that." Jake laughed. "So what's next?" David looked out at the horizon, a slow smile forming. "I don't know, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out." As he set his coffee down and stepped toward the dock, the past felt like a distant memory. The future was his now, and he was ready for it. The end.